Lesson 07. The upper toolbar commands. The visibility menu. The visibility node appears among the various options on the drawing toolbar. From this section it is possible to manage the visibility of the project being carried out in the working environment. The visibility section shows the various categories of entities that can be configured on the model, and for each it will be possible to enable or hide the display. Different categories are represented with different icons, and the latter are grouped as entities of architectural type, type of land, entities of the mechanical plants group, and entities of the electrical plants group. The management of visibility can be carried out both in an architectural environment and in a plant environment MEP, on levels as in the three-dimensional. If we consider a project carried out with Edificius MEP, complete with architectural and plant engineering entities, the management of visibility can prove to be a valid support tool in both environments. If an entity of the MEP group is selected from the architectural environment, this is highlighted in green and a message appears indicating that it belongs to the plant environment, therefore only some parameters can be managed from the Properties toolbox directly in Architectural View, while its geometry can't be edited here. However, from the architectural it is possible to manage the visualization of entities of the MEP group as well as of an architectural type, and, vice versa. In the plant environment it will be possible to hide or display architectural elements as well as MEP entities. For each group, architectural, terrain, systems, if you select one or more icons, the entities of the corresponding type will be hidden from the visualization on the drawing, only by disabling, then clicking again on the same icon. They will be repeated. Again, in the visibility section there are various fields that refer to different options for managing visibility on the drawing. From the Visibility Styles field, a list of visualization styles is available, each one explained with a title and a description, indicating the action it will perform. It is also possible to change the title and description of the styles already in the list, except for those proposed by default by the program and shown here in gray. By applying generic filters from the selection of the various icons, it is possible to configure, using the Add Style Active Visibility option, the display that is obtained as a new visibility style, in order to enable it more quickly later with a single selection. From the Hide Levels field, you can choose which levels of the structure to be shown, consequently all the entities assigned to a level that is hidden will be excluded from the display. The choice of display levels, for obvious reasons, cannot be made by accessing the visibility section from a level view. The Hide IFC field allows you to manage the display of the IFC models provided for the project. On the other hand, by selecting one or more entities on the model, the following three fields in the visibility section are also enabled, i.e. Hide Selected Entities, which will hide the entities selected on the model from the display. Hide Not Selected Entities, which, on the contrary, will leave only the entities visible, selected, and will hide the unselected ones. Hide Types of Selected Entities, which, in addition to excluding the single selected entities, will recognize the type, in order to hide all the entities of that same type. The following options, Hide All, and View All, apply a faster and more complete filter, excluding or including all the entities present on the drawing. By enabling or disabling the System's Coloring field, the coloring of the MEP entities on the drawing will change, as with this option enabled the entities will acquire the colors set in the System's Data section for the relative systems to which they belong. Otherwise, the color will be that of the material they are made of. The Hide Insulation Systems option, if selected, excludes any insulation assigned to the systems from the display. The Hide Types of Systems field shows the list of all the types of systems belonging to the model and allows you to select each one individually, all at the same time or none, to exclude them from the display, a useful function to lighten the visibility in favor of certain types of systems that they want to manage. Similarly, the Hide Plants field shows the list of plants with the name assigned to them and allows their management like the previous item. The Reverse Visibility View option simply reverses previous choices. For example, if you had chosen from the visibility styles to exclude the MEP mechanical systems from the display, with the choice of reverse visibility it will be the only mechanical systems to appear with their color on the model, while all the other entities, MEP and architectural, they will appear gray in transparency. Commands section. When selecting an MEP entity from the drawing menu, the Commands section is also available in the upper toolbar, which in this case includes the distance option. On a level view or in 3D, the activation of this functionality is presented as a support tool for the positioning of MEP entities on the drawing. For example, an entity of type equipment is activated for insertion and then the distance option is selected. Taking advantage, if necessary, of the point or linear snaps of the drawing, with a click you choose a reference point, starting from which a blue line is activated that joins this point and the anchor point of the MEP entity. The line color varies if you recognize displacements in the directions identified by the axis or vertically or horizontally. Until the entity is placed on the drawing with a second click, the line follows the movement of the object. Moving your mouse on the drawing, the entity also moves, the line changes dynamically, keeping its two extremes united, and the value of its length is continuously updated or, alternatively, it can be typed in from the keyboard. By holding down the A key, it is possible to identify the distance from multiple reference points continuously. The purpose of the distance option is therefore to support the insertion of an MEP entity on the drawing, positioning it at a chosen distance with respect to one or more references. If, on the other hand, you select any entity of type pipe or duct already modeled on the drawing, the break option is enabled in the Commands section of the upper toolbar. When this command is activated, the selected connection entity is precisely split into two non-separate segments. The pipe will be divided in the center, where a joint will be automatically inserted to keep the two equal segments thus generated together. However, you will then be able to use the gray arrow to move the position of the joint on the pipe or to type a value from the keyboard and thus modify the length of the two segments obtained. Using the other graphical tools available at the joint, you can reshape the pipe profile. The joint can be used to trace a further section of pipeline, connected to the previous one by means of a T-fitting, obtained automatically thanks to the Smart MEP mode. With the connection entity active, move the mouse cursor to the joint and click on the yellow snap to bring up the directional cube and the protractor, in order to adequately trace the new pipe to be inserted, hooking it to the previous one. Once the direction and length have been chosen, provided that the check mark is entered for the duct in the Smart MEP field, the program automatically generates a T-fitting, respecting the indications provided in the fittings section of the duct. Otherwise, if the Smart MEP mode is disabled, the fitting is not generated and the connection is not made correctly. If different dimensions and/or materials are chosen for the second connection section, when you click to enable tracking, the choice between the option's most suitable dimension to the selected connection or size selected from the library appears. In this case, in addition to the T-fitting, a transition type fitting is automatically inserted, if necessary. Use of the 2D and 3D magnetic grids. From the drawing group it is possible to access the 2D graphics section where various support functions are available for the realization of the project. These include the construction grids, magnetic grid 2D, which can be rectangular, radial, double rectangular, triangular type. The purpose of the grids is to facilitate the insertion of drawing entities, using snap points that they allow to identify. The usefulness of the grids is therefore evident when the arrangement of the entities on the drawing shows a certain regularity, which can be reconstructed using the magnetic grids. The insertion of construction grids is allowed only on level views and not in the 3D environment. From one of the available levels, the magnetic grid 2D, rectangular, is enabled for insertion. By clicking on any point, the window for setting the grid you want to generate appears. If the insertion is attempted in a three-dimensional drawing environment, an error message appears on the screen with the warning that the selected entity, in the specific case magnetic grid 2D, cannot be inserted in the 3D views. The setting window is particularized on the basis of the type of grid selected, as each type requires the definition of specific parameters. In the case of a rectangular magnetic grid, it is required to set the number of pairs of rows and columns of which the grid is to be composed and, for each pair, the distance in meters between its horizontal or vertical lines. A lateral navigator for the column section, and similarly for the rows section, consists of 3 buttons which allow, respectively, to add a pair of lines, insert a copy of a selected pair and delete pairs already in the list. For each new pair added, the numbering is progressive and, by default, numeric, although it is possible to choose an alphanumeric numbering or modify the description of the lines. At the end of the settings, the grid is positioned on the table, using the drawing snaps for this purpose. Once the grid has been configured according to the most suitable method, you can use it for arranging your entities so as to have them follow the created geometry. For example, if you want to insert lighting point entities, using the rectangular magnetic grid. The upper toolbar shows the action section consisting in the magnetic grid 2D and magnetic grid 3D buttons. Their use is enabled in level views for the first and in a 3-dimensional environment for the second. Assuming you are proceeding in 2D, you choose the 2D option and with the magic wand thus activated you select the grid already arranged on the drawing. As a result, you will get the insertion of a light point object in each of the intersection points of the grid lines. In the same way, in the 3D environment, the magic wand is activated by selecting the appropriate button and, with the light point entity active, the grid is highlighted to automatically obtain the arrangement of the objects at the same delta set for the grid. The magnetic grid is then used to manage the arrangement of MEP objects at regular and repetitive distances, exploiting the point snaps automatically recognized by the magic wand applied to a grid. The same grid can be used to make the electrical connections between the light points already inserted. Select the magnetic grid and access its setting window to modify the geometry of the grid according to the arrangement of the electrical connections to be made. Subsequently, from the drawing menu, choose the raceway entity and activate the 3D option from the action section. By highlighting the grid, the connections will automatically be arranged along its sections. Using all the necessary functions, the fittings are suitably inserted and steps are taken to obtain complete and correct connections within the electrical system network. MEP Special Commands. In the MEP environment, the upper drawing toolbar includes, among others, the MEP section, in which support functions are available for tracing the connection entities. These options can be activated, depending on compatibility, for all rigid connection entities, relating to both mechanical and electrical systems, therefore pipes, ducts, cable trays, and walkways, while they do not apply to nonlinear connection entities, such as flexible and corrugated. The first available option is automatic slope and can be activated if you select a section of pipe that is not perfectly vertical on the drawing, with the aim of repositioning the elements to create constant slopes. The available slope options are 3, automatic, from A to B, from B to A. By choosing the automatic slope option, the selected pipe is assigned a slope already automatically fixed with its stakeout, while the options from A to B and from B to A allow you to assign a numerical percentage value to this slope. The data can be entered from the keyboard or modified by proceeding with the associated side arrows. In order to increase or decrease by 1 decimal unit at a time, it can be a positive or negative numerical value, depending on the inclination to be obtained. In the case of vertically drawn piping, the auto slope option is not available. Then, in the 3-dimensional environment only, it is possible to select the Replicate Path option, which enables the possibility of creating one or more paths parallel to the selected one, by setting a direction and an offset. This function is applied to a connection path that has already been created, selecting sections of piping that are all strictly connected to each other, so that there are no disconnected points in the middle of the path to be replicated. The first piece of information to provide is the direction in which the replication is to be made. For this purpose, a graduated circumference appears on the screen, with protractor functionality. By moving the mouse cursor near the center of the circumference, it is possible to rotate at 90 degrees angles, then passing to variations of 45 degrees, 15 degrees, and 5 degrees, moving towards the perimeter of the circumference, up to tenths of a degree at the outermost section. After fixing the direction, the protractor disappears in favor of a ruler that allows you to select a distance that will be indicative of the distance between replicas. Then it will specify at what distance from the path already made the first replica will be reproduced and, possibly, the second from the before, and so on. Once this choice has also been made, the ruler will continue to be displayed, with the functionality of setting, in this case, the number of replicas to be made. In each of the three phases of setting the parameters for the replication function, it is possible to take advantage of the snap support, relative to other entities already present on the drawing. Then, using all the features available for modifying the connection entities, the connections are optimized and completed quickly. The join option is activated if you select two sections of a connection entity that are joined together. This functionality links up pipes or ducts connected in sequence, in order to obtain a single element. The joint that connects the two sections of pipe is removed and the two segments are rejoined in order to obtain a single pipe section. The connect option function is subject to selecting of multiple sections of pipe or ducts that are not connected to each other and for which an intersection point between axes is detected. In such conditions, the two segments will be connected by means of a joint which will be positioned in the midpoint of the intersection of their axes. If you choose to apply the connect command to connection entities that do not satisfy requirements, a message will appear informing that it is not possible to connect pipe ducts because the axis extensions do not intersect. Another functionality is disconnect, which can only be activated if two entities are connected together by means of a joint and selected at the same time. This option disconnects pipes or ducts connected to each other. For this purpose, in correspondence with the joint that forms the connection, one of the two ends that configures the connection is detached, so as to obtain two separate segments. The last upper toolbar functionality is identified by the Connections in Error button. This can be activated interchangeably both on levels and in a three-dimensional environment and carries out the diagnostics of connections in error. The errors recognized by selecting the Connections in Error button are of two types and identified by specific symbols on the drawing. An orange circle identifies any MEP entity with incorrect or missing connections. A yellow triangle with a central exclamation mark, associated with a yellow dot in correspondence with the actual point to which it refers, represents two different types of errors. It could be applied to MEP entities without point connectors, such as a device box. If not connected to other entities, it identifies an attempt to connect MEP entities belonging to different plant systems. For example, let's assume we have a pipe associated with the hot water supply system. If a second pipe is connected to it, it is associated with the same system and the connection between the two pipes will be facilitated by the yellow snap. Once completed, the diagnostics will not detect any errors. If, on the other hand, you want to connect a second pipe section, associated with the cold water system to the same pipeline associated with the hot water system, the blue snap appears. The intersection is then recognized and the connection made, but with the connection diagnostics the triangle symbol will appear identifying an error in the connection. In both cases, represented with the error symbol, by clicking on the triangle, the type of error recognized is specified in the Properties toolbox. Entity without connections in the first case, together with a description that includes the ID of the entity in error and system connection error in the second. The description field will also show a different systems between the connections of the entities and their IDs warning. The Connections in Error diagnostics can be activated or deactivated using the same button on the upper toolbar at any time.